Hey, you awesome folks! Thanks for taking this journey of discovery with your guide, Keith Haney. You're listening to the Becoming Bridge Builders podcast, your favorite podcast for everything from racial reconciliation to education innovation, justice reform, and leading change in the 21st century. This podcast is for people who love to be challenged with difficult topics, but want practical solutions to solve these challenging issues. Becoming Bridge Builders makes change possible. Each week on the podcast, Keith invites innovative thought leaders to share how they are building bridges in their area of expertise. You will hear breakthrough ideas and concepts that are changing the world. He's featuring guests who are best-selling authors, leaders at Microsoft, entrepreneurs, leading educators, professors, lawyers, and so many more. Listen in to learn how you can be the bridge to the change you are seeking.
Welcome to Becoming Bridge Builders podcast, where we explore conversations that inspire understanding and transformation. I am your host, Keith Haney. Today, we have a guest who brings a wealth of experience in law, finance, and constitutional rights. Evan W. Turk is a distinguished legal authority, accomplished author, entrepreneur, and founder of American Rights Alliance. His career began in finance at Princeton and on Wall Street before transitioning into law, where he now practices in Florida, New Jersey, and before the United States Tax Court. Evan's work spans family law, wealth strategies, and civil liberties. They will dive into two of his powerful books, Asset Protection by Design, and we're going to talk about behind the scenes of Inside the January 6 cases, what the media isn't telling you. We welcome Evan to the podcast.
Thank you, Keith, for having me on.
Looking forward to it. This should be a fun conversation.
Likewise.
I'm going to ask you my favorite question to kind of get us warmed up a little bit. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
That is a good question. Because I'm a father now, so I have to enlighten my children. And, I think the best thing is that, do what you can do best. Don't follow the money. Do what you do best, and the money will follow you. Because life is too short it's too long, I should say, if you hate what you do every day, and there's not enough money in the world that can make you happy if 12, 15 hours of your day is not.
That's very, very true. I like that. Don't follow the money. That ruins the whole Jerry Maguire movie, though.
I know. No, that's show me the money.
This is very true.
Because I always feel like I'm a lawyer, right? So there is probably no worse profession to go into if your motivation is money. And the reason why is that everything you do, you're going to be monitored and questioned, and it's highly, highly regulated. So if you're not passionate about what you're doing, you're only going to end up doing crappy work, drinking too much, and making really bad decisions. Especially a lot of lawyers drink too much, which causes everything else to go down exponentially. I mean, you're not at your best. You're not happy. You're not focused. I mean, do you want to hire somebody who's having those problems? I can tell you many who are. So
right.
The truth is, find the job that you're really good at, and that's why I set up this charity, because it's my passion and I love it. And it's a side project, and it allows me to do the areas of law that I'm good at, that I enjoy, that aren't necessarily the ones that will inspire people to go to law school for. But I also get to be extremely happy. And yesterday, the big shot lawyer I was doing something that was like right out of law school I haven't done in years, because I had to let go a paralegal of mine. I'm like, wow, I forgot what it was to be a lawyer.
Right.
You call in the courts, getting permission, doing this and doing that, and you're like, wow, sometimes you forget. And it's nice to go back to where you were. It keeps you grounded. Just don't forget who you are, where you come from.
I'm curious, what do you think is the biggest misconception about lawyers?
That they're happy,
Mm.
that they're rich, that the money's worth it. Most important, that they're smart.
Well, they went to law school.
I mean, that's the thing. I was about to say that, but they went to law school, right? You know, that means that you're smart in one way of intelligence, right? But all the time you spent going to get your undergrad, getting your law degree, and everything else, you never had any common sense. I got into finance before I was a lawyer. So I knew how to invest my money. I knew what types of retirement programs there are. I learned basic life skills. But if I just went to law school right out of college, I would have never have learned those things. I don't know how my career would have changed the trajectory of it, but I wouldn't have had the entrepreneurial uh, urge to do what I'm doing. The understanding that you have to not only run a law practice to be a great lawyer, but you also have to run the practice. You have to know how to pay taxes. You have to know how to pay payroll. You have to know also how, when money comes in, what to do with it, because when you charge a lot an hour, it doesn't mean you get to keep a lot an hour. It means that you just have money juggling in different pockets. And sometimes those pockets aren't your pockets, they're everyone else's. So, and the hardest thing in my practice, and I'm learning this every day, is hire the right people. If you don't, you think that you have good people because they're busy, but they're busy wasting your time.
For a first-year law student who just graduated, what lesson or caution would you give them as they begin setting up their law firm?
I think right now with artificial intelligence, you could go into the psychological process of it and say, these are the things I like. These are the things that I hate. These are the things that I'm scared to death of, but I think that I like it. And with all of that in the mix, what you are able to do is find out what type of law you really want to practice. Because when I went to law school, the reason why I became a lawyer was I got into a fist fight, believe it or not, when I was in camp, sleepaway camp. And I talked my way out of getting punished because I was protecting someone else. I went through the family values. I went through all of this. And everyone, my whole childhood said, you're a good lawyer. You could argue, right? So I thought I was going to be a great lawyer. I was going to be a litigator. I was going to argue. And I realized I hate arguing. I was like, it's you grow up and you realize that that's not what life's all about. It's what I love doing is helping people. So how do we avoid the argument? Let's be proactive, not reactive. It's the person who constantly goes to the law firm and says, why me? I'm getting sued again. Well, how about you fulfill your contracts? How about you do all the things proactively so you don't get sued and your life will be much better? You might have a little less money now, but you'll have a lot more freedom later.
I love that. I'm assuming a lot like medical school, lawyers have to learn really early on how to interact with the public and people. How
Yeah,
did you learn to do that and do it well? Because if you don't do that well, I don't think you're going to be the best lawyer. Well,
right. Well, right out of college, I didn't go to law school right away. I wanted to take some time off, figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up. And I got a job because I didn't want to live at home. Not that my parents were awful, they were amazing, but I wanted to grow up. It was my time. So what I ended up doing was I got a job in finance. I didn't even know what finance was really about. I just got a job. It's the first job that hired me. And that opened a door, a huge door. And then I became a financial advisor with Prudential Securities. And I had a branch manager that quit or got fired right after I got out of training on Wall Street. So all the rules that we were instructed beforehand didn't apply. For example, the biggest producers had to go to New York for these, big events that they would always host because we were, 50 minutes outside of New York. But they always sent me because I was the one, oh, I'll go. So I got to learn from incredible people who made significantly more than I did. that were extremely knowledgeable. And that's really what I ended up doing, is learning from them. One of the things I learned to do at that point that was so fundamental in my career, and I would have never have learned this on my own, was how to delegate to the right people. So I was 21 at the time. I looked like I was 12, and people were asking me what my philosophy is, what would I do when you lose money? And I, all kidding aside, I could have said to them truthfully, I said, I've never lost a dollar from my client. And the right answer would have been, because I've never had a client. You'll be my first. And still be honest. But I learned how to delegate and use that, my what would have been my weakness, to my advantage. And I found a group of estate and trust asset protection attorneys that were really capable of giving me credibility. So I aligned myself with people who provided me with credibility. I also did that when I was in law school. I ended up working with my estate planning professor. So I got trained from, my professor who knew what he was doing, gave me credibility. I learned from them until I went on my own. And it's funny, um, I have this weird thing right now where I go to sleep and I listen to all these presidents in the 1700s. It's my thing. I fall asleep like that. I don't care if I wake up and I hear it 3 other times, or, it's not like a suspenseful thriller. So, um, the one thing I learned is all of these presidents in that time were like Abraham Lincoln in the 1800s. They were attorneys, but the way they did it was through apprenticeships. And I think we forget to do that now. And I think the apprenticeship, or the mentoring, or the volunteer work that you do is so invaluable. And we forget that because we want the quick buck nowadays.
So your advice to my listeners are, if you want to go to sleep, listen to presidents.
Dead presidents. It's just like very incredible. Like the things that you learn, like one of the things that I learned from them is that they all had brothers and sisters that died. I mean, it was like you had to have 8 kids to have 2 that got into adulthood back then. And one of the presidents, I'm trying to think, it was like one of these least known presidents that in the 1800s. Right after he won the presidency, before he even got inaugurated, they were on a train ride, and his last surviving son, they were riding to New Hampshire, and the train fell off the track, and his son's head got literally cut off. I mean, this is the time. This is how brutal the times were back then, and to understand where we've grown and evolved, because I do a lot of constitutional law. I like to know what the thinking of the people were at that time. I mean, it makes no sense for us to understand and say we have this wonderful document called the Constitution if we don't understand the basis for it. And I think learning from a lot of dead presidents helps.
I love constitutional law. So tell us a little bit about what got you into that particular area of law.
Well, I laugh because the 2 things that I do more often than not are the 2 things I did in law school I got my worst grades on. So it wasn't because I was a natural study for it. What was going on was I got asked to run this organization. I got asked to create this organization. It wasn't like I decided to do it one day. And I was just seeing what was going on with this country, how divisive this country was, and not that you have to understand or even love our current president, but you have to understand. It should be understood that things that occurred during his first term, in between his first and his second term, and his current term, just doesn't make sense, right? Like a lot of things does not make sense, and we're more polarized as a nation than we probably have been since the Civil War. And the one thing that we should have faith in is the Constitution, because that is the one document that has gotten to where we are. The challenge that we have is that we have this wonderful document, but people interpret it to whatever makes sense for them. And you don't have a society if the laws aren't just and everybody's treated the same. And when President Trump got criminally charged for crimes that you knew that were politically driven, it shocked me that people were like, yeah, 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 because you hate the man. But you only you're happy because you hate the man. But do you think that's justice when they deliberately go after somebody? And then what happens if you have someone that's equally as polarizing, but that person's on the left? Let's say it's I don't know, AOC, for example, or Jasmine Crockett is very polarizing right now in Congress. Now, we'll remember, the people who saw it happen will also remember what happened and now use it against them. And now we were going back and forth. There is no more decorum. There is no more justice anymore when you are selectively identifying who your enemies are and creating laws to put people behind bars or to fine them so that they are never able to survive because they have too much money or they have a political ideology that is antagonistic to your own. That's a problem. So that's really like the main thrust as to why I do what I do. And although I have conservative values, I really want to also, as a charity, focus on things that could happen to the left, not just the right, because it could happen. And we have to understand it could happen to both sides.
Exactly.
We have to find a way where we can be civilized as a country. And I keep saying this, it all started when Obama was in office. And when we had the first Black president, we thought, or at least I thought, you listen to Chris Rock and his joking and then like, there will never be a Black president. And there is. I said, you know what? Look how much we've evolved as a country. Like we're at, like the day he got sworn in, we were probably the least divisive as a country. I mean, and growing up and living in a predominantly white neighborhood, I didn't hear anything bad. I mean, maybe I'm ignorant, but not willfully, but I didn't hear anything like that was even more so than embracing. And he had this amazing opportunity to get everyone together. And look where we are now. It's evolved to now everyone is different. You're not American. I think, the term African American is, I just don't like the term because you may have never been to Africa. Why would you relate to a
Right.
country that you've never, or a continent you've never been to? You're an American because if you're in war, right? I don't care the person on the left, the person on the right who's going to save my behind and I'm saving theirs is Black. I don't care if they're Asian. I don't care what they are. I just care that they're the best at what they do, right? And now we're just at such a polarizing that everyone is labeled something other than just an American. And I think it's crazy. I mean, and there used to be two genders. Now there's 283 of them. Like, why complicate something that does not need to be complicated? I mean, who cares if you're a boy and you feel like more feminine than the next boy or vice versa? Like, who cares? But now we march for it, like as if it's like the same thing with it was for you know clear, obvious racial discrimination or clear and obvious problems with the society. Now we're creating problems that never really existed and just saying, oh, they're not in your line of sight, they're beneath the surface problems, which means you can never figure them out and you can never get peace because you can create whatever you want that's below the surface.
Along those lines, it made me think about, as you were talking, one of the biggest things I'm hearing today is a debate about the First Amendment, free speech. And what I hear dividing the free speech argument is we have free speech as long as you say things I agree with. As a constitutional lawyer, what are we getting wrong about the First Amendment and free speech?
The free speech is not for what we agree with. You have to fight for the free speech that you completely disagree with. I mean, that's the ability to offend somebody opens up for debate. And to have a free society, we have to debate on things that you and I are not in agreement with. Let's just take gay marriage as a perfect example. I'm 48 years old. I mean, I think it was George W. Bush that had this defense of marriage between a man and a woman. And I think at that particular time, the majority of people were in agreement that, and wasn't a Democrat or Republican thing. I think majority of Americans believe that marriage is between a man and a woman. The majority of people don't believe that anymore. We've evolved. And the only way you could evolve is by saying things that would otherwise offend you at some point before. So if you take away that freedom of speech, you have a society that has no ability to evolve because we're only going to say things that we all have to agree with. We can't be true to our own souls and ourselves. You know, right now, I think it's horrific when you see women or men dressed like women, like Leela Thomas, I think is this swimmer's name, with a full male anatomy at 6'4", participating for UPenn, participated no longer, and couldn't compete at the male level, but now broke every single record. Now, I think that's completely wrong, but I should also have the ability to say why I think it's wrong. And the other argument is that I am sexist, or I have some phobia or fear or something wrong with me for expressing that. But I feel the same way for the other person that says I'm wrong. I think they're crazy, but I will fight for their ability to say that. Again, in order for a society to evolve, we have to protect not the things we agree with, but the things we do not agree with.
That's very true. So since we've already opened a can of worms, I'm sure it'll get us in trouble.
And let me tell you, I go on these shows like cold, so I don't know what your political opinion is. Like, I don't know a darn thing. My agent books this, and all of a sudden I'm having a free conversation. I won't want it any other way because this is how we evolve as a society.
No, I agree. And
to have the
think
ability to have an open conversation.
Yeah, the free speech thing has been so diluted that we've got it so wrong that we can't have an open, honest conversation.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it. But since we're, like I said, since we're diving behind the curtain of things, one of the things that fascinated me was the media's understanding of the January 6th cases. And I've heard so many conflicting reports about it. What was the moment that you realized the public narrative wasn't matching the legal reality?
When they used the word insurrection, because, you may not agree with, or I may not necessarily agree with a lot of those things where it was public trespass. And, but if you look at the actual videos of what went through the Capitol on January 6th, you had policemen standing alongside U.S. civilians walking through, just like it was any other public protest. I have someone who works for the charity. He had a megaphone that was preaching peace. Wasn't planning on going in the building, but it was kind of like here's the door, it's open, everyone's walking in. There's police walking side by side, people. Like, you wouldn't think that you're doing anything that's going to get you in trouble. And this is when I knew it was more than just, um, an isolated incident that occurred. Should not have occurred. It occurred. This is when I knew is when someone like him who never had a single issue in his, criminal blemish whatsoever, um, you already talked to legal authorities, you already had an attorney. All the Department of Justice had to do is go, "Hey, your client Trennis, he needs to come into the station because we're going to arrest him. All right, we decide to press charges." It would have cost the state, the country, very minimal dollars. No, what they did was they took guns, not one, not two, but dozens of police squad, public humiliation, put guns, targets on him and his children. That does permanent scarring. Treated him like he was like some wanted murderer that they couldn't find, and he was eluding police. There was no excuse for that. That's when you knew it was more than just a little issue or a criminal issue. It was a political mission that anyone who defied um, the public or the narrative, they're going to make an example out of you. And they did. They did for him, unfortunately.
And it to me it goes back to what we were talking about before. It was tied into the First Amendment, the people's right to peaceably assemble. Again,
Hmm.
I agree with you. Going into the Capitol, there was probably issues with that. I didn't like the look of it either. But we turned that into something that it was not, and you couldn't even talk about it in a free speech forum, and you weren't being given the whole story. So I'm curious, from a legal perspective, why are these cases so unusual in our American history?
Because you have to, oh God, I can't answer that concisely because there's so many theories, and I don't want to
Right.
be a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, I get you.
So I'll answer it with a question. With the question is, if you want to do the most amount of damage, to do the most amount of for identifying who the problem is in your own country, right? Wouldn't it make the most amount of sense to make it publicly known that they are criminals and they are wrongdoing, they're wrongdoers, and that they should not be a part of civilized society, and hope that they go away? I mean, I could ask 10 more questions and come up with 30 more theories as to why, but they were a public enemy to a politically driven mission that not only took over the justice system, took over the media. I mean, if you recall that time, now it's talk about freedom of speech, okay? George Floyd, um, let me ask you a question. George Floyd, is he an American hero or not?
I wouldn't call him American hero, but that's
Okay.
that's my thought on it.
Right. So at that point, the media, for whatever reason, decided to make this guy an American hero. Now, let's just go back to the woman that I think was his girlfriend. Maybe I'm getting this wrong. And if I do, I apologize. But I've heard this time and again that there was a woman, she was pregnant. He took a gun to the pregnant woman's stomach, threatened to kill not only the mother, but the baby that's inside. Okay. Guy had a rap sheet that was longer than 99% of the rest of this country. Okay. Now, they said he would have died of fentanyl. and that was what the cause of death was. It wasn't the ridiculous way the police handled it. But if you saw the tape, it was ridiculous how the police handled it. And, you know, I, as a white Jewish man, have seen police go overboard when they pulled me over for a traffic infraction. I can only imagine what it's like to be a Black American, even if it's not racist. I would have thought this white on white crime that this police officer did to pull me over, thought I was a drug dealer because I didn't pull over right away. I wanted to be in a lit spot. I could only imagine if I was Black how I would have taken it. So I don't want to be insensitive to that line of thinking. But there's so many, or if there are so many of these crimes, why do we pick the one that had the most amount of argument against and for? So now you have this guy who wasn't a martyr. He wasn't a saint. He wasn't somebody who epitomized doing the right thing and making the right decisions. He was on fentanyl when he got arrested. He didn't listen to the police. Did the police overreact? Hell yeah. I don't care the other argument. I've heard it. They overreacted. This guy was an idiot. Leave your knee on this guy's head for like 7 minutes. But to treat him like he was a saint, a martyr, I just can't. And the problem is there are so many of these cases that you could identify. Why pick the one that takes whatever your bias is, not necessarily your race, this is your bias because I grew up in a different world than you did. Everyone grows up in their own experiences and that's how they create their own, rules. Like if you were born in a mob, your whole mobster life would be your rules. It's whatever your principles are. And a lot has to do with your upbringing and your surroundings. So why pick that one case? But this was during COVID lockdowns, and there were all of these people who couldn't go to church, couldn't go to school. They couldn't go to the convenience store to get bread. Okay. They had in some states, they had to have these cards. I mean, it was very like out of a novel. It didn't seem like America over fear of a disease that you knew you were being lied to. I mean, because they were studying this virus at this lab in Wuhan, China, and they were saying, no, it didn't come here. It was 5 miles down in a wet market. So you allow all these different things happening at the same time. America, as we knew it, was being taken from us, at least in the sense of common sense. So if you understood all the frustration, then comes January 6th. And the people who walked there truly believe that the election was stolen. The president, the person that they voted for, said that. Right now, it's coming to light there are a lot of voter irregularities that I do think, without drinking the Kool-Aid, I do think that there was some things that really need to be questioned that will blow your mind and that are coming to fruition. But you also ask why did the government do what the government did to stop that from happening when questions couldn't be answered? And all of this happening, all in this really short period of time. I have, think about puppies. They call it zoomies. They need to get their anger out, right?
Right.
Kids, my son, I love him to death, but if he doesn't play sports and he just stays playing video games in the room, I want to kill him because he has all this energy you need to get out. For months and months and months, you have all these people with this pent up anger that they haven't had the ability to do anything with. And you're going to cause problems. And then you take to George Floyd and you see that CNN, there's a fire. They're saying this is a mostly peaceful protest. And then you see people walking through the Capitol building and they're called insurrectionists. Like, they're not treating these things with parallel analysis. They are treating this with bias. And that's really, what I'm trying to do as an organization is eliminate the ability to say to you, like as a white man to a Black man, I don't like the George Floyd situation. And that doesn't make me racist. I don't want to feel like I can't say that in a free society without, and I might be wrong, Keith.
Right.
But not because I'm necessarily a racist, but Keith, you may enlighten me and make me think a different way. And I'm capable of making a decision, say, you know what? I don't see it the same way, but now I understand your side. Just like what we discussed before about gay marriage. I mean, it's only, 20 years ago, give or take. I mean, as I get older, time just gets quicker and
Right,
quicker.
exactly.
But when George W. did the Defense of Marriage Act, um, most society was in agreement to that. And now that what was the majority has become the minority. And that's what a free society is allowed to do. But we can't do that if we can't express what we really believe. A conversation in my household about George Floyd should be the same that as I have with you, Keith. It shouldn't be anything. And my family may not agree with me the way I feel, but I should be open to share that without being accused of being a racist or being accused of anything other than how I feel. And if I am wrong, tell me why I'm wrong. Don't shut me down and take away my platform.
Right. So I'm gonna blow your mind a little bit here because
Yeah, please.
and it comes with two things. Number one, the Defense of Marriage Act was actually signed by Bill Clinton.
There you go. See? You just changed my mind, and I thought it was
September
Bush.
21st, 1996. Bill Clinton signed
There
into
you
law.
go. Bill Clinton.
So it's even more interesting if you go back to that.
But what's even more interesting is if you look at what Bill Clinton did as president and Donald Trump, you would think they're in the same party.
Right.
They're just
to go back to your other thing, I think the thing that was also hard to look at with this whole being locked into COVID, the George Floyd thing, I think what made that case become the signature case, unfortunately, was the community had been saying for a long time, there's a problem with policing in our neighborhoods and no one's listening. Because we were all locked down, even though George Floyd was not a perfect case, it was a case everybody was talking about. And I think, like many things, it's like you don't let a good crisis go to waste. And so what happened was, unfortunately for him, he became the poster boy for there are problems in the community. How are we going to address it? The January 6th thing was a problem to me too, also because you had people that probably should have been accused of trespassing. Well, from what I can tell, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, overly charged from a trespassing, which would have been a misdemeanor, to a felony for an insurrection. And to me, you took a case and you overcharged it to make a point. So I go back to both of those were, unfortunately, crises of opportunity to send a message.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I agree with you for the most part. I mean, I know a lot of things about January 6th, at least things that have brought to my attention, how there's this woman, Ashley Babbitt.
Mm-hmm.
The video shows that she was shot basically point blank by a police officer. So now somebody told me, somebody who has, I have no reason to doubt, very credible attorney said the video that they have, because he was a part of the January 6th investigation, shows that this police officer changed out of his uniform right away from a Capitol Police to street clothes. I mean, things that I don't know why, but it just seemed a little odd. Somebody who was charged with the crime there basically because, and the video shows what he was doing was protecting an officer by going on the officer, like to protect from people that were, I don't want to say stampeding, but the officer fell and the person went in to protect the officer and they got charged for causing the problem. And that person's life is never the same. There are a few more people that died that were civilians than were reported. The timelines we know that were distorted as to when the building got broken into. But the term insurrection itself is, like you said, it's an overcharge. And I feel like that happens often. Do you remember when the term illegal alien was, for my whole life until maybe 15 years ago, it's what they were called, right?
Right.
and then they became undocumented workers, right? Now they're called migrants. So now we assume why they're in this country. And the law had got so crazy that there were people in Central America that couldn't work because of it used to be called global warming, but they don't know if the world's getting warmer or colder. So it's now called climate change because if it gets colder or it gets warmer, you got both bases covered.
Right.
So now in climate change is these people are here because of climate change. We know we're being lied to, but that's why we use the word migrants because they're coming out, and then they change the rules
Or
and they
even
say,
asylum
okay,
seekers is another one I
yeah,
hear.
or asylum seekers. I was going to get to that. So now we'll just identify all these people. They're entitled to benefits because they're not illegals. They're not migrants. They're asylum seekers. So when you have these bill, and now it's left and right lying to you. It's like we're idiots, but we are idiots because we accept their lies because we don't care what the truth is. You have the left saying the government was held up and shut down because the conservatives care less about health care and Obamacare. The conservatives saying that the government was held up because of these illegal immigrants that Obamacare was entitled to. I mean, and you could go to war believing your position is right, and you know that two positions can't be completely this right when they contradict one another.
Right.
But yet there is no media that questions the complete and utter differences. And there hasn't been for years. I mean, there's really, Fox's news, was it balanced? I mean, it's more
Fair and
balanced than
balanced.
CNN on the
Yeah.
other side, fair and balanced. But it could be fair and balanced. But if you underreport something and you overreport something else, like take a perfect example was during Joe Biden, right before the election with Hunter Biden, the laptop. The New York Post reported it, and the Department of Justice said, no, that's fake. So Facebook couldn't post anything. New York Times said it was fake. They all knew it wasn't. You talk about election interference. I mean, that could have swayed the votes, just that little thing. So what was really on that laptop was just nuts, like
Right.
crazy. I mean, could you imagine, like, if one of the Trump kids were, like, smoking crack off of a woman's behind? I mean, it's like I mean,
It might
and to say
make
that,
the news, yes.
yeah, it might make the news, just say.
So, Evan, now that we've listed all the problems, I'm going to ask you the important question of what do we do to fix it?
We unite. That's the first thing. We don't focus and voice our differences and say that we're not one society. Because I remember after 9/11, we were one society. When there are problems that happen outside this country that attack us, and we all have an equal and understandable enemy, we all unite, right? But we shouldn't have to unite because we have an outside force. We should unite because we are, you know, a hodgepodge of assimilation, and we should encourage assimilation in this country as an American identity. An American identity was, the reason why we're probably the best country, and I say the best country because we are the best country. We're not the least corrupt country. We're not the, you know, most civil to one another. We have more incarcerations than we should by probably 100-fold. But we're also a country that has accepted everybody, that assimilated everyone and created our own culture that's not German, it's not Irish, it's not black, it's not white, it's American. We should focus on what brings us together and say F you to those who try to bring us apart. What brings us apart is identifying us as not Americans or not having equal access to opportunities. I mean, there is no place in this world that people are sneaking into like they're sneaking into this country just to live that dream. There's no place in this world that gives you the opportunity to succeed like you do here. We should embrace that and embrace our commonality rather than focusing on the things that will get us to be at war with one another. And right now, the politics are so divisive that people who, you know, come from the same family can't even sit for Thanksgiving together because she's a Democrat, he's a Republican. You should see what my family, my aunt just passed to cancer, but may God bless her. She was 89 years old and a devout Democrat. And we've had so many heated conversations, crazy conversations. But at the end of the day, we're family, right? And we should be reminded that, if somebody attacks us, one of us, they attack us all. We're a country that is great because of our differences, but our differences is what makes us the same. It makes us American.
I love it.
And remember that.
I'm going to ask you my other favorite question, Evan, as we kind of wrap this up. This has been a great conversation. What legacy do you want to be remembered for?
Funny because I do multi-generational planning and legacy planning, and I used to do a lot of seminars, and they said, "What are you going to be remembered for?" Right? My legacy, if you could read my eulogy, and hopefully it's not for another 50 years, give or take a year or two, it's going to say that he believed, like my girlfriend says it best. She said, "You have such ridiculous confidence that you believe that you can make the difference that you're making." And that would be my legacy. And my girlfriend was a Dolphins cheerleader, gorgeous woman, and I've known her for years. And I said, "Look, I've gotten you to date me.
There you go.
I'm doing something right with this false sense of confidence,
Right.
right?"
You're living above your means, right?
But exactly, and that should be my legacy. Believe something that nobody else said was possible. I made it possible.
Evan, thanks so much. As we wrap up, where can people find you and learn more about you?
Well, for the charity, it's AmericanRightsAlliance.org. We're a 501c3. We could really use your support in fighting the fight, the battle, because we're one country and we should be united, not divided. To create your own legacy, we do estate planning, we do probate, asset protection. It's Turk Law Group, www.turklawgroup.com. You could find me on Facebook and social media through the American Rights Alliance or through my name, Evan W. Turk. And do not be a stranger. So I appreciate you, Keith, for taking the time and having me on your show. And I appreciate your audience for at least listening to me. And I hope you don't hate me, but I hope I can get one person, just one, to be closer to understand that we should all be united, not divided as this wonderful country.
Evan, thank you for sharing your insights and your knowledge about the law and civil liberties. For those listening, you can learn more about Evan's work and grab copies of his book, Asset Protection by Design and Insight. And encourage you to follow along with him and his charity and give to that as we protect the things that are most valuable to us. Until next time, keep building bridges that bring understanding and hope. Thank you, Evan, so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Keith, for having me.
Do you know that most entrepreneurs hit a revenue ceiling and have no idea why? They're working harder, spending more money, running more ads, but revenue stays flat. My friend Dr. Noah St. John calls this the invisible break. He's giving our listeners a free revenue ceiling audit to help you see what's really holding you back. You'll get a free 30-day membership to Noah Bot, giving you access to Dr. Noah's 30 years of experience to help you reach your next level. But hurry, because there's only 50 available this month. So if you're tired of being stuck at the same revenue level and want to finally break through, get your free revenue ceiling audit at drnoahvault.com in the affiliate link that'll be listed in the show notes.
Thanks for listening to Becoming Bridge Builder. If you enjoyed this episode and want to help support the podcast, please subscribe and share it with others. Post about it on social media or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram at @bkeithhaney and on Getter and Twitter @RevHeadpin. Thanks again and tune in next time.